This segment of Delmarva Life is brought to you by the Premo team and Meridian Bank.
The endless ocean. It's active and at the same time peaceful. It's big and blue and beautiful. And it's got something in common with the economy. This according to loan officer Dan Premo of the Premo team at Meridian Bank. Dan calls the economy as a whole tidal. He explains this as we catch up with him about the state of affairs when it comes to the mortgage market. Interest rates are on the increase. That change might not necessarily excite folks, but it's needed, according to loan officer Dan Premo of the Premo team at Meridian Bank.
They come in and they say we have to control this inflation, and so they increase the rates, which does what it's supposed to do. It cools it off. This consequently will drive the housing market back down because people cannot go in and pay both. So they can't pay the seller, they can't pay the higher price, and they can't pay the higher interest rate.
Dan says we've seen adjustment periods like this before, but this one's bigger.
We're in probably the worst supply and demand situation, at least probably fairly of the last 30 years. And no one seems to have a solution. So going forward, I think housing prices are starting to come down as a result of, a little stagnation, which what it was designed to do.
This is where Dan's ocean analogy comes in, a rising and falling tide.
Over the last 3 years prior to 2020, we had really witnessed a very high tide. We had seen a big influx of spending and prices and everything increase. So this was representative of the tide coming in. But the tide has to go out, like what you're seeing with inflation. The tide absolutely has to recede. That's why they call it a recession. And that's where the tidal comes in, is because the tide has to recede in order for it to keep balance. Otherwise, we just flood.
These higher interest rates that are allowing the waters to recede, Dan says, are still quite stellar.
It's still amazing. I use the analogy with people when they say, oh, these rates are 5.5, 5.75, 5.875. I say, if you had $400,000 in your checking account and you were going to lend it to me, you're going to write a check for that $400,000 for the next 30 years, and you're going to collect interest on me for the next 30 years, what kind of return would you want on that? If you thought about it and you broke it down yourself and looked at what you would collect and the time frame that you have to wait to collect it, would 5.5 or 5.75 be worth it to you to lend that? And the answer, if people are honest, and of course that's rhetorical, but if they're honest, no, it's not. So yes, these rates are still phenomenal. Back in the 80s, a good rate was 14, My parents' first house was $30,000 and the rate was $14.99.
And so buyers aren't holding back.
Remember, we make all of our decisions based on budget. The numbers are somewhat consequential. We think the numbers in our brain, we should go, this is a better interest rate, or my sister got an interest rate a year ago, but at the end of the day, when you go home, you're looking at what your monthly budget is. If it ties into your monthly budget, then the rate is somewhat inconsequential. And when they're going and looking at these rents and they're seeing that these rents are the same price, they're going, okay, do we rent or do we own?
And that action has kept Dan's office active.
The American dream is to own a home. And so we'll always stay busy. In our niche of the USDA and FHA, the government programs, remember, USDA is still 100% financing, right? So they're coming in, and we're also seeing some seller assist come back. For the longest time when the market was inflated, again, part of that recession and the recession of the waters, when there was this influx of prices and people could say the house was $285 and they would get 6 offers at $300 and over, if you said seller help, what seller help is, or seller contribution, helps first-time home buyers or home buyers that qualify pay their closing cost. It's really hard when you're young and you're starting out, I've said this before, to have that kind of money to close. So USDA still has 100%, and we are, which has been awesome about this freeze or this pendulum being stuck, is that we're starting to see some of this seller help come back, where if one of my younger clients or any of my clients go in and go, we need 4% seller help, it's not all of a sudden like they have leprosy. It's like, okay, we'll look at this, because the house is actually sat. So there are positives to the water receding.
Now, if you have questions about any of this, or you're interested in buying a home, you can request a free consultation with the Premo team, and the link to do so is available on delmarvalife.com.